What does home feel like? Is it a place or a feeling of safety? For a whole generation of British women, that feeling wasn't a given. It had to be built every single evening. Between the end of rationing in the 1950s and the turbulent 1970s, Britain was changing faster than ever before. Yet inside the home, a quieter rhythm held firm, governed by the evening routines of women who created a sanctuary of predictability in a world of flux. These weren't just chores. They were the deeply ingrained rituals of domestic order and care. Join us as we explore the forgotten process of putting the house to bed and rediscover how Nans built a fortress of comfort, one methodical task at a time. Cleansing the day, the sacred act of washing up. The first step in restoring order was to erase the day's mess. Immediately after the evening meal, the home's focus shifted to the kitchen sink for a clean-up that was entirely manual. Automated dishwashers were a distant dream for all but a few, making this laborious process a nightly constant in millions of homes. The ritual began by filling a basin with hot water and soap flakes. To keep the water clear for as long as possible, the washing followed a strict and logical sequence. Glassware came first, followed by cutlery, then plates and serving dishes. Only at the very end, when the water was clouded and greasy, were the pots and pans submerged and scrubbed. Each item was then dried by hand with a tea towel before being returned to its designated place. This was the housewife's primary domain, but the work was not always solitary. Older children, especially daughters, were often conscripted to help, turning the sink into a nightly stage for family negotiation. Arguments over whose turn it was to wash or dry were a common feature of this hour. It was a moment of intergenerational training, where domestic skills were passed down through shared work. The kitchen sink became a social arena where family roles were reinforced and sometimes contested, all through the simple, repetitive act of cleaning up. The work didn't end there. A guide for working women from 1953 listed brush the kitchen floor and wipe working surfaces as an essential task to be completed before any relaxation could begin. For many women, this meant scrubbing floors on their hands and knees long after the family had settled down for the evening. Securing the flame, the primal power of the fire. With the house clean, the next step was to make it safe and warm through the night. In the 1950s and early 1960s, central heating was a luxury reserved for the wealthy. For most, the home's primary source of warmth was a single, open coal fire in the living room. This hearth was the undisputed heart of the home, a multi-sensory presence with a distinctive smell of smoke and a unique soundscape of crackling coals. Consequently, one of the most critical evening chores was tending to it. This wasn't a matter of simply letting the fire die out. It had to be banked for the night. Banking the fire was a skilled procedure that required knowledge and care. It involved clearing the grate of excess ash, then carefully arranging the remaining hot embers and fresh fuel, so that a low, slow-burning fire would be maintained until morning. A correctly banked fire meant the hearth could be revived quickly the next day, providing immediate warmth against the chill of an unheated house. It was a dirty, dusty job, demanding constant physical interaction, feeding the fire from the coal scuttle, poking it to improve airflow and clearing away the soot. This nightly ritual, however, was destined to disappear. The Great Smog of 1952 in London, a deadly air pollution event, prompted the government to pass the Clean Air Act in 1956. This legislation began a slow but decisive shift away from coal towards cleaner fuels and eventually gas and electric fires. A gas fire could be lit with the turn of a knob. It was not tended or banked. The transition eliminated the dust and labour, but it also erased the ritual. The smell of the home changed, its evening sounds were altered, and the ancient rhythm of putting the fire to bed vanished completely. Preparing for battle, the uniforms of tomorrow. A significant portion of the evening's work was not about the day that had passed, but about imposing order on the day yet to come. This proactive labour was the hallmark of a well-run home, positioning the housewife as the family's chief logistics officer. It was a conscious effort to preempt and manage the potential chaos of the morning rush. The tasks were varied, but all were aimed at ensuring the next day began smoothly. This involved laying out clothes for the entire family, school uniforms for the children, and work attire for the husband. Shoes were a particular focus. They had to be cleaned of the day's dirt and polished to a shine, ready for immediate wear. This quiet work was often performed while listening to the radio, a communal activity for the women of the house. The ethos of make do and mend, a holdover from wartime scarcity, remained a powerful force. Frugality was a deeply ingrained virtue. Socks were meticulously darned, and buttons that fell off garments were saved in a dedicated button box for future repairs. A common task was turning the collars on men's shirts. When the points became frayed, the collar was unstitched, turned over to expose the unworn side, and carefully sewn back on, doubling its lifespan. This culture of repair was an economic necessity, but also a valued domestic skill taught to girls in school. By investing this labour in the evening, the housewife was ensuring her family could face the outside world with pride, effectively arming them for the day ahead. This invisible work was a profound act of care, expressed through meticulous planning. The new family altar gathering around the globe. As the ritual of the coal fire began to fade, a new glowing box was ready to take its place at the centre of the home, the television. In the early 1950s, the radio, or wireless, was the dominant form of evening entertainment. Families would gather to listen, but it was often a background presence, allowing for other activities like knitting or mending to happen at the same time. The television demanded a different kind of attention. Its rise was accelerated by the 1953 broadcast of Queen Elizabeth II's coronation, an event that spurred millions to buy their first set. By the 1960s, the television had supplanted the fireplace as the undisputed focal point of the living room. Furniture was physically rearranged to face the screen. Family evenings became structured around broadcast schedules, with a limited choice of channels, making viewing a shared, communal experience. Unlike the radio, the television required focused visual attention, making simultaneous chores more difficult. It became a new domestic pacemaker, dictating the family's schedule and reorganizing both physical space and time. This new dominance was so complete that it even changed how families ate. The rise of convenience foods like the Vesta range of dried curry and chow mein was directly linked to the desire for a quick meal that could be eaten in front of the television. The glowing screen became the new electronic hearth, a modern family altar around which a new set of evening rituals was born. The last provisions, an offering for the morning. The final acts of preparation inside the house were designed to ensure the morning would be as smooth as possible. After the kitchen was cleaned and the living room settled, many women would set the breakfast table for the next day. Cereal boxes, bowls, and cutlery were laid out in anticipation of the morning meal, a simple act of foresight to shave precious minutes off a hectic start. But the preparations also extended beyond the front door, connecting the home's internal rhythm to the community outside. This was the era of the milkman, whose daily delivery was an essential service for millions. Part of the evening routine involved gathering, rinsing, and placing the empty glass milk bottles on the doorstep for collection. This small chore was an act of trust and reciprocity, a signal to the outside world that the household was ready for the morning's provisions. It was a tangible link in a chain of services that bound the community together, a system reliant on routine and mutual understanding. The sight of milk bottles on a row of doorsteps was a quiet testament to a neighborhood in sync, each home completing its nightly shutdown in preparation for a collective dawn. This ritual, like so many others, would fade with the rise of supermarkets and the decline of doorstep deliveries, breaking a small but significant link between the private sanctuary and the public world. Battening down the hatches, the unbreachable fortress. The very last physical acts of the evening were those of securing the home. This involved a final tour of the ground floor, checking that windows were latched, drawing the curtains, and locking the back and front doors. While seemingly mundane, this routine held deep symbolic weight. It was the formal act of closing the boundary between the private family space and the public world, transforming the house from a place of daytime activity into a sealed, protected sanctuary for the night. In the post-war era, the home was heavily promoted as a refuge, the symbolic center of national stability, imbuing these simple actions with greater meaning. Locking the door was a definitive statement of closure and safety, enclosing the family against any external threats. Drawing the curtains served a dual purpose. Symbolically, it shielded the family's private life from the view of outsiders. Practically, it was a crucial act of energy conservation. In an era of inefficient heating and single-glazed windows, heavy curtains provided a vital layer of insulation, trapping the precious warmth generated by the downstairs fire. With bedrooms typically unheated, it was common for ice to form on the inside of the window panes during winter. Families would undress in the relative warmth of the living room before making a swift dash upstairs, clutching hot water bottles filled from the kettle. The final turn of the key in the lock was the definitive end to the day's domestic performance. It was the drawing of a line between the waking world and the vulnerability of sleep, the moment the house became an unbreachable fortress, safe and ready for the night. These weren't just jobs to be done. They were a language of care, a physical manifestation of a promise to keep the family safe, warm, and ready for whatever the changing world would bring. Born from the constraints of technology and the pressures of the time, these rituals created a powerful sense of order that has all but vanished from the modern home. If you remember these quiet, methodical tasks, or have stories of your own about how your family put the house to bed, please share them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more journeys into Britain's forgotten daily life.